The spirit expands or ascends as its creation materializes, or it's entrapped in the matter and then it has to create physically. If it can't create mentally, it has to create physically. Now, bacteria are tiny microscopic organisms that are generally classified as plants. Now, bacteria lack many of the internal structures found in higher life forms. Bacteria have three basic shapes. They can be round or spherical, that's here and here. They can be rod-like, and you call those bacilli, that would be here and here. Or you can have spirals here and here. They can be mobile. They have this little whip-like thing here. You call it a flagella. And when you see it in the microscope, you see it whipping the water and they really move. Or it can have these little tiny hair-like projections all the way around. Those are called cilia. And it's kind of pretty. You'll see them floating across the microscope, rippling. They look like a little wave. Now, bacteria live in virtually all environments. They'll grow almost anywhere. Some bacteria produce their own food from sunlight. Some live on waste and dead organisms. And some are parasitic and live on other living tissue. Now, why am I sitting here talking about bacteria and pond scum and calling it aspects of creation? What does this have to do with God? What does it have to do with you? What does it have to do with anything? It has everything to do with understanding God and understanding your purpose, both past and present. These bacteria and pond scum are your ancestors, and it's through them that your energy flows in multiple directions. Okay, for example, today and throughout Earth history, unicellular plants have been the basis, and they still are, they're the basis of the food chain. All plant and animal life are directly or indirectly dependent upon unicellular plants, which are consumed as food and which enrich the soil, allowing other plants to grow. Now, on another level, let's say the same mental energy, call it a mind or spirit, but the same or an intelligence, but the same intelligence that evolved and lived as the first blue-green algae expands and grows through the branching evolution of all descended life forms. In other words, that first helium that interacted with hydrogen to form blue-green algae lived in that blue-green algae, and it made its creation, so it ascended. But it's responsible for its creation. So therefore, it's responsible for all life that evolved since then. So what does it do? It feeds it. It's a base of the feed chain. It takes care of them. Now, the same mind that evolved, or the intelligence that evolved blue-green algae, selects other minds or spirits and allows them to descend or reincarnate into the continuing creation. They can incarnate and they can either better it or they can degenerate the creation. Now, you evolve to a co-creator, God, by knowing and recognizing your heritage. You evolve to a co-creator by recognizing your worth, by recognizing all the energy, skill, and intelligence that went into your creative evolution. You evolve to a co-creator God by knowing what's best, or by knowing evolutionary good from evil. Now, the descending mind or spirit seeks to fully express itself as it incarnates into each new cycle of creation. For example, the unicellular life forms brought forth what was within them when they created chlorophyll and photosynthesis. Now, what did they do? They took light and made food, oxygen, and water. Now, that was natural and instinctive for them. Why? What was within them? What was their heritage? Their heritage was at 10.3 billion year cycle of chemical element and chemical compound formation. That's what they knew how to do. They knew how to expand to light and create from nothing. Okay, now blue-green algae uses gas that are expanding from the sun. They use chemical elements that haven't cooled down. They're just coming from the sun. They're still gas to make chlorophyll. But now the first bacteria, now it takes a lot less energy to use something that's already solidified. And that's what the bacteria did. They used carbon and magnesium from the ocean floor to create their food. And that way they multiplied rapidly. And they used so much carbon and magnesium that they broke down the heavy ocean crust. And the soil became lighter and more granitic, and Africa and Western Australia rose above water around 3.5 billion years ago. Neutrons are particles. They're part of every atom with the exception of hydrogen. Now, neutrons are neutral. They don't have any charge, no electrical charge, and they can just pass into the nucleus of an atom unhindered. Let's say they can invade an atom unhindered. But neutrons consist of a positive, subatomic, positive and negative particles that are expanding. They behave like magnets, and they can change the genetic information, or the information they can push into that spirit that encoiled into your genes. Okay, isotopes are atoms of the same chemical element. They all have the same. They all have identical atomic numbers and the same number of protons or positive charge in the nucleus, but they have different number of neutrons in the nucleus and different mass numbers. In other words, if you have 10 carbon atoms here, and a bunch of neutrons are invading, and this first carbon atom, none of them get in there, but the second one invades there, the third one, 2 invade, so you have 7 different groups with different numbers of neutrons in them. Okay, now, carbon has 7 different kinds of atoms. Modern science states that carbon has 2 stable isotopes, C12 and C13. C12 is a natural form of carbon. It's found in 98.88% of all carbon compounds formed by nature. Now C13 has an extra neutron in the nucleus. C14 is used in radioactive carbon dating because it decays at a regular rate. Now, what I'm saying is nature knows to use C12. That's the natural form of carbon. 98.88% nature will use that C12. Now, geochemical researchers show that bacteria in the Barberton region of South Africa use C12 between 3.3 and 2.7 billion years ago. Now, they found a trough in Zimbabwe, Africa, and it was intensely deformed. And that's because they say one continuous line of bacteria, or one continuous family of bacteria, lived in that trough and used the material in that trough for 500 million years. Now what happened? They loosened it, the soil in the trough, they aerated it, and they expanded the mineral life until gold rose to the surface. Now quartz rock conglomerates from Witwatersrand Sand Basin in South Africa, that's where they're near the trough, contain the Earth's largest gold supply. So you can thank those little bacteria when you look down and see your gold. Now around 2.8 billion years ago, bacteria in Western Australia overgrew the supply of C12 atoms, and they began to use C13. They then multiplied rapidly and spread into waters of the dark side of the earth, over Tasmania, northwest China, the Soviet, across northern Europe, and the extreme eastern part of North America, from Canada to Florida and into Spain. The respiratory products of bacteria using C13 expanded into the atmosphere and interacted with hydrogen to form methane gas, also known as swamp gas and natural gas. Now, methane burns readily with a very hot flame, and if you mix it with air, you'll get an explosion. It's lighter than air, and for approximately 100 million years, methane gas accumulated in the upper atmosphere of the dark side. In just a minute. Now, the explosion began over Western Australia around 2.7 billion years ago. Now, scientists state that the volcanic eruption generated a huge methane fireball that tore and ejected a patch of the Earth's mantle, and it became the moon. Now, the huge fireball traveled over the dark side, evaporating water and causing underwater volcanism that spewed sediment belts containing uranium and iron with a 3+ charge from Mauritania, Northwest Africa to North America, China, the Soviet, Finland, and Sweden, as the methane fireball expanded from the Earth and formed the first North Star. U.S. astronauts collected 3 samples of soil and rocks from the moon. Official reports state that the rocks approach terrestrial basalts of volcanic origin. That means Earth's crust. So, now, the moon consists of subconscious energies of an earlier dimension. In other words, it consists of spirits that were on the ocean floor in earlier times. Modern police reports show that levels or proportions of emotional crimes rise and fall as the moon goes through phases. Now, Carl Sagan, author of Dragons of Eden, wrote that there are occasional but reliably reported incidents of difficult intellectual problems solved during sleep. Now, one of the most famous ones was that of a German scientist. I have his Friedrich Kekulé von Stradonitz. Now, in 1865, one of the most important pressing problems, they wanted to know how benzene was formed. What was the chemical structure of that? And that was a big research thing. Well, this scientist, Kekulé, was had been thinking about that, and he went to sleep. He was sitting in a horse-drawn carriage, and he went to sleep, and he dreamed about dancing carbon atoms, and all at once the chain of atoms just whirled around, and the tail connected to the head, and he knew. When he woke up, he knew that the problem